My name is Jeremy Wolf, Executive Director of More Than Baseball, and you're listening to The Grind, our podcast about the lives, lessons, and journeys of professional baseball players. Today's episode is with Ty Kelly.
From Northern California, live in Los Angeles, California, currently, if you can call this living. Drafted by the Orioles, traded to the Mariners, traded to the Cardinals, DFA'd, claimed by the Blue Jays, signed as a free agent with the Mets, DFA'd, re-signed with the Mets, DFA'd, claimed by the Blue Jays again, one of like two people to have been claimed twice by the Blue Jays. DFA'd, claimed by the Phillies, DFA'd, not claimed, re-signed with the Mets, and then called up, DFA'd again, not claimed, stayed with the Mets, and then signed with the Salt Lake Bees, the Angels, last year. And that's where we are.
Ty's a mensch, a good man, and one hell of a teammate. We delve into what it's like embracing baseball's daily struggles, how to capitalize on every opportunity, and his takeaways from 11 years in professional baseball. I'm honored to have shared the field with him and thrilled to now have him on the podcast. Here's episode 7 with Ty Kelly.
And if you're gonna pull a gun, say it, I guess I better throw my knife.
The whole point of this, it's called The Grind for a reason. And you were on a handful of teams. What was that for? And I've always wondered this because I've never talked about this with you, but what was that like did you get used to changing teams? Was it something that you were uncomfortable with at the beginning and then you learned how to adjust to it? Was it something what was that process like for you?
Yeah, totally. I ended up having like team ADD at the end of my career, or as my career went on, just because like getting a fresh start is really cool. And also, so like the thing with getting traded or whatever it is, going to a new team, is they see all of the positives that you have. Like, so you're, the team that you've been with for a while is just like, you can't do this, this is why you're not moving up. And then you go to a new team, they're like, oh, we really like that you can play a lot of positions. We like that you can do this. Like, sure, you have things to work on, but like, we like these things. That's why we got you. So I always enjoyed that, going to a new place and having them see the positives. And I think you just get used to the guys in the clubhouse in every different place, because essentially every clubhouse is exactly the same. And it's really just about identifying which new teammates are similar to which teammates from previous teams. There's always going to be some like jokester. There's always going to be the more like jockey guys from like high school movies. And there's going to be the more nerdy guys that you can sit around and do crosswords with. And so every clubhouse is very similar. And once you figure out who the guys are, you can create relationships and really like streamlines a lot of the team building stuff that can be tough when you go to new places. But I definitely just got used to it, and I always appreciated going to new places. The first time was the weirdest for sure, getting traded in the morning before a day game, or before a doubleheader actually, in Bowie with the Orioles. Our manager called me, and I'd been there for 4.5 years, and getting traded the first time is like, it's insane. Because it doesn't make any sense, because when you're in an organization, everyone's like, oh, you can't get out of the organization. There's no way to get out. There's no way to move up. There's a log jam in every organization. Like, everyone feels like that. And so getting traded the first time was crazy. And but it was awesome because I got a promotion and got to go back to the West Coast for the first time in my career, which is obviously where I grew up. So getting to play in like Sacramento and Fresno and places near where I grew up was amazing. So I really appreciated that.
What would you tell college Ty or first year pro ball Ty, looking back on your career now, knowing that you played 10 years, knowing that everything that was to come, is there something that you wish you would have known earlier on? I know that's when people ask that question, they say, of course I didn't know it, and that the time and playing professional baseball at the time gives me that experience to know it. But is there something where you look back on and say, I wish I knew something that would have helped me earlier on in my career?
I think it's sort of just like life lessons, just not putting like crazy pressure on yourself, just sort of being like, like you're going to try your hardest, and sometimes, you're going to get out 5 times that day and it's going to suck. But like, you need to just like, it's all part of the process. You're going to get more chances. And I think that that's sort of the thing that no one ever knows how many opportunities they're going to get. So every at bat and every pitch they throw feels like the end of the world, because especially in minor league baseball, there's no job security. So you don't know what's going to come the next day. And I think that sort of just trying to just be like, like whatever I do it's the best that I can do. No matter like what's going on off the field, what's going on the field, bad umpiring, which unfortunately was, my undoing in many ways. I just like couldn't take the umpiring at the end of my career. Like once you've been called up and you see that there are like, umpires can actually be good. It can be hard to come back and not just feel like you're owed like a big league strike zone, even though like, everyone's operating, like everyone's human. First of all, everyone's gonna make mistakes and stuff like that. So I think I would just try and like pull the like stakes back a little bit. You're gonna try hard just as a competitor, just trying to, just like handle everything in a more like calm way, and just realizing that everything is part of the ups and downs.
What are some things you did mentally and physically, before, during, after games that kept you sane?
I always tried to separate myself from baseball as much as possible after games. So, I mean, whether that was like working with Matt Perret on creative things towards the end of my career, it was really cool to be able to have a relationship with him where we were working on creative projects and, planning things for the off season. I feel like everything during the season for me, like when the game ends and you just want to text all your friends and be like, oh, we got to go do this thing in the off season. We got to do this. And they're just like, yeah, I'm at my job right now, but for sure. That sounds great. And I was just always like looking forward to the off season and getting to just like relax and take your mind off everything. So anything that I could do to separate myself mentally from baseball. I know a lot of people, especially now, like guys are so fluent in all of the like analytic stuff and all of the new wave, like swinging techniques and all that stuff. And they're like, so, which is like great for them that they're able to, to see what they're doing in their swing and break it down and stuff like that. There's like the whole paralysis by analysis thing that I think will, be an issue with a lot of guys that are so concerned with every like little swing mechanic thing. But it's still a good thing for them. But I would say, I think that just like separating, like it didn't work for me. Separating my brain from baseball activities was the best way for me to be able to just come into every day with a mindset of like, okay, I've got today, and then after the game, I can go relax, go watch like 3 hours of YouTube videos of like people playing chess and poker and like doing different accents and stuff, and just like whatever is has nothing to do with baseball.
Is there something you did physically? Was there a routine that you had, or something you did, stretching? I don't know if you did something special or something different than.
I played a lot of cards.
That I'm sure that helps too.
Yeah, I mean, I never went on the DL once my whole career, except for on the Phantom this past year. Like a couple times I was on the Phantom once, and then the like, I don't know, the inactive list or something, but never for injury. And I never really stretched up until like recently. But it was one of those things where I think that I really, like, I knew how to control my body when I was out on the field. So I wasn't like lunging from halfway down the first baseline to try and reach first and like, you know, breaking my knee or whatever.
Mhm.
I always had a pretty good ability to like understand where my body was at, and if I wasn't feeling great, how to like, you know, taper off how much stress I'm putting on a hamstring or something like that. It's not like I was never in pain or aching or anything like that, but I never really needed to stretch. I think I just, like I said, I just knew how to get the most out of how my body was feeling every day. And some people, I think, can only go like full out. Also, like, I wasn't drinking all the time or anything like that
Yeah.
either, so I probably wasn't you know, putting undue stress on my body from going out and staying up all night or anything like that.
From being in the big leagues, I've wanted to ask you this question for a long time. From being in the big leagues, was there somebody you saw or somebody that did something where you said, wow, I'm going to take that, or wow, I didn't know I could do something that way and I'm going to use that? It could be swing related or fielding or even before a game or after a game, but was there a moment where you said, you know, that's a really cool piece of you know, advice or something that he did?
No, I don't think so. I think that, like, you can watch work ethic and stuff like that. Watch guys in the video room, at the fields, the way they go about trying to prepare every day is really cool. It's also very set up for you to succeed. To where, like, if you're Yoenis Cespedes, you're going to have however much time you want in the cage with the hitting coach. Like, him and Kevin Long are going to be in there, and they're going to go through every single drill that he wants to do that day, which is a lot of drills. And, like, you know, tons of weighted stuff, obviously. Like, you know, now that I've mentioned him, like, he's just an absolute beast of a human being. And, like, taking BP rounds with like with a donut on and just hitting balls, you know, like 500 feet, and it's just outrageous. But it starts like in the cage. Like, he's got this whole routine in the cage, one-handed stuff from both sides, like not moving from the you know, Kevin Long throwing from, you know, maybe 20 feet away overhand, like firm, and Cess with like you know, still with like a weight on his bat, of course, because, like, why would you swing the bat when you can swing it with a weight on it just as well? And just, like, you know, he's in there for 30 plus minutes doing all this stuff before BP, before everything, before lifting. And I think that that's really cool. Obviously, like, different things work for everyone, and that sort of you know, like, that amount of things didn't work for me because I would overdo it. And, like, throughout my career, when I was struggling with my swing, I would take, you know, I would hit off the tee for an hour, and, like, my hands would be bleeding, and it was counterproductive, and it just made me way more into my own head. So I was never, like, once I stepped back from that and was like, I'm not going to go to the cage anymore. So for a long time, like the last few years of my career, I was just not going to the cage, or I would do a little bit off the tee just as, like, prep for BP. But I would mostly just try and be like, I'm going to make my adjustments in the game. So, yeah, so, like, that's the thing that worked for me. Obviously, different things work for everyone. But in the big leagues, definitely, like, things are set up for you to be able to go into the video room and have every pitch that you've seen from the starting pitcher on the video. And you can watch all of them. You can watch, you know, the last couple of starts of the pitcher, all of those things. And guys are in there throughout the day. And I think that that's the thing that I probably took away most, is just preparation and how much I always really liked the communication too of guys, like, yeah, it looks like he's been doing this recently. Like, this is the trend. Like, this is how he's pitching. This is how he's throwing to righties and all that kind of stuff. I think that that's really cool.
What was the moment like when you were called up for the first time?
Yeah, it was it was really cool because it was Wally Backman. It could easily have been a manager that was just like, hey, you got called up. But of course it was Wally. So it's this whole performance every time someone gets called up. It's always super dramatic. Even after that, like I got called up because that year I was up and down 4 times. So there were 3 times in the middle of the year and then in September. And every time Wally just like, he's just like puts on this whole performance. And he had this thing where he tells everyone that they owe him a bottle of Dewar's when they get called up, which is some sort of whiskey or something, I think. I don't really know, but yeah. So like we were in Colorado Springs, we had a day game, and I'd been like leading the league in hitting in batting average, which I don't know if that means anything anymore, but I was like leading the league in batting average, and the night before I had gone like over 4 though. So that day I got to the field and we had it was like a day game, so I had an off day. And so I walked out with my coffee, like 10 minutes before the game or whatever in the dugout. And Wally came up to me and was like, hey, go up and tell the club you owe me a bottle of Dewar's. And I was like, what? He was like, go tell the club you owe me a bottle of Dewar's. I was like, Wally, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't know what that is at this point. I don't know what Dewar's is. And he was like, go up on your way out. Tell the clubby you owe me a bottle of Dewar's. Congratulations, you're meeting the team in Washington tomorrow. You're leaving tonight. And like everyone in the dugout goes crazy because this was my 8th year. So whenever someone gets called up, especially someone who is taking a long time, everyone's very emotional, and they, it's a really cool experience just for everyone. And so like I was pretty tame about it because I don't know, I've like been
Who you are.
Yeah, I've been playing my whole life. So like, it's like, this is what I've been working for, like this is supposed to be part of the plan. Like I'd been a good minor leaguer for a long time. So it certainly was not like a matter of time thing, but it was like, okay, like this is part of the process of everything. My parents were much more, outwardly emotional, I guess. And, and then I packed my stuff up, left, and was in DC that night. And
Was there a moment walking into the locker room where was there a sense of accomplishment that came over when you got to the locker room, or was it just I have business, I have work to do?
Yeah, it was. I mean, there's definitely accomplishment, but also it was one of those. We think that Lucas Duda is going to have to go on the DL. So you're going to come up. Most likely he's going to go on the DL, but it's not like a for sure thing. So there was also that, which is like, it seems like I'm definitely a big leaguer, but at the same time, I could easily not be one. Like, I wasn't put on the 40-man until the next day because they had to make sure that he was injured and going to go on the DL and stuff like that. So, there was definitely like, that was in the back of my mind, and I definitely didn't want to get like too crazy excited about it, even though, I was hitting like 400. So I figured that it was going to happen at some point that year because I was doing so good, like I literally couldn't have been doing any better. So yeah, I mean, I was, like I said, I was really pretty tame about it. I didn't tell like a lot of people. I told some of my friends, then call my parents. But I did want to like make sure that it was going to happen, sort of like with the Olympics, like we're like, hey, going to the Olympics. And then it's like, like we're going to see if we have the Olympics. We're not so sure yet. Like, okay, like, I'll believe it when I see it at this point.
What was being sent down like, and having to go back down to AAA and being in that environment again? And then, with that, what was it like going up and down a few times? Did it lose its luster? Was there something, did it start to bring you down? Were you upset by that? What does that affect on you mentally?
You can definitely take it multiple ways. You can either take it as a challenge and be like, I've got these things to work on. I know that I've seen the big leagues now. I know what it's like there. I know what I need to improve upon to be able to stay there. Or obviously you can be like, this sucks. I'm going back to Colorado Springs. Like, this is terrible. I mean, playing in Vegas, like, you know, they have a new stadium now, which is beautiful, but it was going to Cashman is not the exact same thing as playing at Citi Field every night. You know, when the difference between like 30,000 fans and, you know, 3,000 fans who don't care about you in Vegas because they're all tourists and like you just want to go get drunk and yell at people. So it can be very like shocking to the system. Fortunately, I kept playing well in Vegas, and the cool thing was every time I would go back to Vegas, I would look up at the scoreboard and my batting average would be like 380, and it was like, oh, like I'm a good player again. But it also comes with an expectation of like, man, now I got to hit 380 to like, you know, I got to get 2 hits a game if I want my average to not drop, which is obviously like a much better problem to have than being in the big leagues than hitting 1 something. Because it had been a struggle the first time I got called up. It was definitely a struggle. I didn't get my first hit till my 10th at bat. And then like the next day I pinch hit and got another hit. So I had a little momentum. And then the next day I started and went like 0 for 5 with 2 double plays. And like, it was a really bad game. And like in New York, when things are bad, it's really bad. Because the fans, you know, you can feel them getting restless, and you can start to hear like the boos creep in, especially when the team's losing, and you happen to be replacing David Wright, who has had a good career, to say the least. And yeah, so I, you know, it was good going down to get to have that confidence and to get to like regain your confidence. And I think that that's something that happens for guys at a lot of different levels of their career. I know like it happened to Conforto that year, when he got sent down to AAA. He had skipped AAA the first time, and then he got sent down to Vegas for his first time in AAA, and he was able to relax and work on things and play against lefty pitchers. Like he wasn't starting against lefties in the big leagues, you know, for whatever reason. Like he's obviously an amazing hitter, but that's just what was going on that year. So he got to like regain his confidence and to just like work on the things that he wanted to work on. And I think it was a big deal for him to be able to take that demotion. The same thing for like Kevin Plawecki and other guys, to take the demotion and go work on things and be like, I went 0 for 4. At least I hit 3 balls hard today. In the big leagues, you go 0 for 4, you hit 3 balls hard. Like you're getting booed probably, you know? So I think that like you can watch how people take the demotion, and how they respond. I think that's like really telling of a guy's character.
Was there a welcome to the big leagues moment for you?
Yeah, my first at bat, I struck out on a pitch that was like 6 inches inside. And I was just like, oh, okay, like this is how it is. Like, it's not hard enough that I'm facing Steven Strasburg my first game, but also like, I'm not going to get any calls, because, you know, it's my first game and he's Steven Strasburg. And, the very first game I didn't play in, cause I got there kind of late. They're like, so David Wright was still playing. He started the first game, he hit a home run. And then after the game, I didn't realize that we were supposed to do the like championship belt ceremony thing. Like they pick a champion of the game or something like that, in New York. So David Wright there's this championship belt for every time you win. And they switched up it's just a MacGuffin really, the belt. Like they switch it up what it is, in other seasons, but that year was the belt. And so they also do a shout out, like the whole team is supposed to be in there. And I didn't know that. So I like in the minors, like your family's at the game, you go down the third baseline and talk to your family, right after the game, you know, with like your helmet and your bats and stuff like that, hold it like, like you're a child. And I talked to my dad for a little bit because he had flown out for my first game. And then I went in and they were like, "Oh, the captain's mad at you. Like you didn't show up to the ceremony or whatever." And I was like, I didn't even know like what was going on. And like, obviously it's not that big a deal, but I saw him like, and he'll give a shout out to like who played the best in the game, pitchers that did well, whatever, whoever played hard. And then like whoever got called up for the first time, like, "Hey, welcome to the show, this person," like he gave me a shout out, but I wasn't there. And he was like, where were you? Like I gave you a shout out and everything. And yeah, that was cool because it's David Wright and like because of who he is and what he means to the Mets organization and just baseball in general.
I think it's so cool to hear those stories. I had no idea. I'm a diehard Mets fan, played for the Mets, met him. He's the fucking best guy.
Super nice.
But those little things, those, and this was what, this was 17?
16.
16. The year after they went to the World Series, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so
Which
16.
is crazy.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was that like for you?
So it's the year after the World Series. So like, and it's New York, which obviously like I didn't really know. I had heard like about booing in New York and stuff like that, of course, but I didn't know what it was like. I had barely ever even been to New York. I had gone when we played against Staten Island, the Staten Island Yankees. We took the ferry across in 2009 when I was in Aberdeen. And we took the ferry across. That was my only time ever in New York. I was 20 years old. I wasn't even 21 yet. And just in Times Square, like, of course, like a bunch of freaking tourists, like, "Where should we go in New York? Let's go to Times Square." Like, oh my gosh. I mean, I would be, yeah. So anyway, so signing with the Mets in 2016 is the year after the World Series. Expectations very high, crazy good pitching staff. Obviously, like they've continued to have good pitching staffs, but sort of at the height of like this could be an absolute dynasty. They could, of a rotation with Harvey coming off of his Dark Knight years, Noah starting to become like who he was, becoming one of the best pitchers in the league. Jake DeGrom still like very underrated, even in 2016, very underrated. And then Bartolo, of course, and Matz and other people. But yeah, so I actually got a call like right after the World Series. So that's when the free agency period starts. And Terry Collins actually like called me, and I was very surprised. Like he obviously didn't have to call, like someone could have called my agent from the team, but he reached out to me and I had a conversation with him. And like from there, it was very much like the recruiting process in college. Like the head coach of the college just called you and you're like, "Oh yeah, of course I'm going to go to this place. Like that sounds amazing." And that was a really cool thing to have that kind of interest, especially coming off of 2015, where it was a really strange season playing in Memphis and Buffalo, and sort of the beginning of getting like kicked around with the getting designated and things like that.
What was that? So this was 2016. Were you in the qualifier for the WBC?
Not in the qualifier. No.
What was it like getting the call from? Did you know you were going to be on the WBC team if they were to win?
Yeah, so I would have gone to the qualifier. The thing was, it was in September, so it was if I didn't get called up in September, I would play in the qualifier. If I did get called up, I would stay in the big leagues. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up getting called up for September, and then I didn't have any idea what to expect because I pretty much always knew I was going to be called up for September. So it was never really a thought in my mind, like maybe I'll go play in this qualifier, because it was like I had, at that point, I'd already been called up a couple times and I had started to have some success in the big leagues. And it was just like, I'm a utility guy, switch hitter. Like it's the perfect guy for September. to just be able to go pinch hit in a random spot or go, fill in at a certain position or whatever. So I barely really even thought about it. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool that I can play. I didn't, I'd never thought that I could even play or had even thought much about being Jewish since I was like, random times in my life. And then from when I was like 8, playing with the dreidel, and my mom's side of the family teaching me about the Maccabees and stuff like that. Like back before I even knew that that was a religion. I thought that there was just like history lessons, and they're like, just teaching me more history. And so it had been a long time since I had even thought about that really. And then so I obviously like the team qualified, and I was like, wow, this is pretty crazy. I guess I'm going to have to play in the World Baseball Classic now. And just so many opportunities started opening up from that. And like I said, I'd never, the thing with the WBC is like, everyone's always like, oh, if they had a team, whatever, if they have a team Ireland, I'd be able to play, but they don't have that. And so, which is the thing that I always said, because like my last name's Kelly. I was like, if they ever have a team Ireland, I'll be able to play in the WBC. And then of course, like it happens that, I get to play for Team Israel.
What was that experience like? I've talked to Blake, obviously, and Zach Pemprice was the first person to do this. But he wasn't on the WBC team, I don't think. What was that being in Korea? And where was the first part was in Korea, and then the second part was in Japan?
Yeah. First round is Korea.
What was that like, that environment, playing in front of 40,000 people? Was it different for you? I mean, you've been in the big leagues. Did it feel different? Did it feel like this huge event? Did the guys on the team see it as this incredible opportunity, or was it just another game?
Yeah, I think it definitely was an event. It was an opportunity. It's in domes. So like you're in this beautiful, like pretty much brand new dome. I forget the exact name of it, like Jochuk or something like that. I would probably mispronounce it even if I knew the name of it.
The Kia Honda Japanese Superdome.
If only
presented by Pikachu.
Yeah, if only it were a car, it would be so much easier to pronounce.
Yeah.
And it was definitely different. Like especially our very first game of the entire tournament against South Korea. That was different because it was against the home team, like the home nation there. It's an all-star team of a country, and it's, in Korea and Japan, like those guys are absolute superstars in whatever city they play in. The country obviously knows them. Like they all have their own walk-up songs that the crowd sings, and they all know it. Like they know dances to it. They know, like what the words are obviously, and how to, just the whole stadium be singing a walk-up song for a player. And it's not like they're all on their local teams. Like this is the national team, and they just have that much love and appreciation for their players. That's really cool. And it's just such a different environment to, baseball in the States, where everyone is sort of subdued and kind of like, not paying attention or going to just get a beer and a hot dog or whatever, which is great. That sounds really fun too. But it's really cool to be a part of the whole cheering and everyone rallying around their team and their country.
What was y'all's expectations in the WBC? Was it, we'll see what happens, or was it we have an opportunity to win this pool or to move on to the next round?
I think we had a little bit of a chip on our shoulder from the get-go, because we knew that we could play. It's hard to know how you're going to do, but the whole thing also is like, well, the Korean league is like a AAA league, right? Like that's what everyone says. Like if you're going to compare to the States, which unfairly or unfairly, the thing is that it's like a AAA league. So we had guys that had been in the big leagues. They had one guy who had ever been in the big leagues. And like because a lot of their guys didn't come back, basically. Like Gene and Choi didn't come back. Shinsu Chu, all the Korean guys, except for one. Daeho Lee was the only one that came back. And so we're like, like this is one of the top teams, but what do they have that we don't? I mean, maybe a little more, overall experience, like throughout their entire lineup. But at the end of the day, like we have a bunch of guys that have played and have been in situations like these before, and our young guys are just as good as a lot of their players. So I think that we were like, we can do some things here for sure. But it's hard to. It's a lot easier to say that now. Now that we beat them like 2-1 or whatever, which easily could have gone either way. But I think we definitely had a chip on our shoulder from the get-go, and then getting to beat like the Netherlands, also Chinese Taipei, was really cool.
Do you have a favorite moment for the WBC?
I think that winning that first game against South Korea was really amazing, because like, first of all, like I said, it was the very first game of the entire tournament. Everything had been completely stacked against us. We'd been out there for about a week training, and we had all of the earliest practice times. Like, it was every morning. We had the first practice time, and it's just like, so you're up at 6 every day, and then the very first game they play us in the night game against South Korea. So it's like, okay, of course we've gotten on this schedule for the last week where we practice at like 8 a.m, and then they have us playing at 7 p.m, which is like ridiculous. It's like, you're playing with like jet lag basically. And everything had just been like stacked against us. And I think that beating them, especially after like each team, from a baseball standpoint, each team had left double-digit guys on base. I want to say we had left like 12, 15 guys on base, including like not getting squeeze bunts down with a guy on third, like bases loaded, and like just straining so many guys. And it was just like one of those games where you don't know what's going to happen, because every inning there's some threat, from both sides. So being able to come out on top of that was amazing. And also, I should say, like, Scotty Burcham, who got the game-winning hit, the infield single, played an unbelievable shortstop for the entire tournament, like, was definitely one of our unsung heroes. So I think that, like, for me, as someone who's a little more of a veteran at that point, it's really cool to see a young guy step up and get recognition on like a world stage, where he had been in like high A at that point. So that was really cool to see.
Is there a way to compare that experience of the WBC to what we went through in Germany and Italy? Are they comparable at all, or is it even worth it to try to find comparisons in the two?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely comparisons, because it's international baseball, but at the end of the day, like, you're playing for the Olympics. I think that that's a lot more meaningful in different ways than the World Baseball Classic. Like, the World Baseball Classic is an amazing tournament, and it's all Major League Baseball, so it's first class. It's everything that you could ask for in terms of inexperience. But in terms of like, what exactly are you playing for? I think that the Olympics are a lot more meaningful. I think that you're playing for a lot more of a defined group of people, where the World Baseball Classic, I think you're playing for a lot of people that just want to watch good baseball and just want to see elite athletes, compete. Where with the Olympics, I think you're playing for something that is like at the core, in the hearts of a lot of people, that with the World Baseball Classic, I don't think that it brings out those same types of emotions. So I think that even though, a lot of times you're playing for 200 people in Germany and Italy, or even less than that, it's a lot more it's just a lot more meaningful.
This was, let's see, this was World Baseball Classic was 2017. That was year 9 for you, right?
Yeah.
You played another 2 or 3 years? 2 years?
Yeah, I played 17, 18, 19. Yeah.
I remember we were talking in Israel when I lived there and when you were getting your passport about how you retired, I think, during the season, right? It was, I think you said you were put on the Phantom and you just got tired of it. Was there a moment where you said, I'm done, I'm good, I'm ready to go play in this European tournament and then end my career? Or was it like just accumulation of, I've played 9-10 years, I've done everything I've wanted to do in baseball?
Yeah, I think pretty early on in the year, I knew that I wasn't going to be, I wasn't going to be taken seriously as a prospect anymore. First of all, I don't want to make this answer like an hour long, but baseball has changed a lot, like, just with analytics and with how certain types of players are viewed. So the veteran utility player has a lot less, has a lot less utility than they used to, because the computers don't show that, like, once you hit 32 and you do a lot of things okay, like, they don't show that sort of versatility does all that much for your team. But I mean, like, that doesn't take into account what you do in the clubhouse. If you're some sort of presence in the clubhouse, whether you can coach guys throughout the season, things like that, which obviously for people that have been in clubhouses is very meaningful. So, like, I'm certainly not an analytics hater or anything like that, because, math is math, and to argue with math is futile. So I'm definitely a supporter of all those things, but there's some sort of human aspect of the math that I think is missing at this point, that, with enough players who are analytics forward, or whatever the phrase would be, like, with enough of those guys trying to make it work, I think it'll be really useful in the future. But, having said, like, all those things, I realized very early on in the season that only going to minor league camp, making less than half of what I had made in my other free agent contracts, like, was just not going to be treated the same way, even though in 2018, the season before, I had been in the big leagues for like a month and had some pretty good streaks in the minors in Vegas. You just don't get treated the same way as I would have maybe 2 or 3 years prior. So in the first week of the season, I didn't start the first game, which is fine. Like, I knew I was going to be a utility guy. We were in Albuquerque, and the second game I wasn't supposed to start. And then they were like, "Hey, you're going to have to start the second baseman. We think he might get called up." I was like, "Okay, well, like, I thought I might have just started the second game because I didn't start the first game, but I could already see that I wasn't going to play that much." And then, so I started the second game. I go like 4 for 4, and I'm like, this is going to be it, this is what it's going to take to get called up. And then the next day I don't start. And I was like, okay, this is how it is. I do see what's going on. Because, like, if you go 4 for 4, if your first game of the season and then don't start the next day, like, it's not good. They don't care that much about how well you're doing, and hitting 4 singles at that, continuing with the new wave of what matters and what doesn't theme. But so I sort of, at that point, I was just like, like, this is likely my last season. That's fine. Baseball is very frustrating at this point, because, in my 11th year, if I'm still getting out against the same types of pitchers and pitches, I'm not, like, improving. Like, what am I doing, So I could definitely feel that, and I was pretty fine with it. The great thing is that our team in Salt Lake was very young, so I got a lot of respect from the young guys. I was able to sort of be like, a veteran presence, and have that respect. And it's a cool way to go out, because, like, especially, like, the day I retired, everyone was like amazing with me, and you know, they let me play, which was cool, I guess. But like, you know, everyone was really cool about it and really respectful, and they recognized what I had done throughout my career. And it's nice to get that sort of respect.
When you look back on your career, is there something that made you successful? Is there something you did that worked for you that could have been the differentiator between making it to the big leagues or not?
I think it started in 2012, and it was just a confidence thing, really, or almost like a cockiness kind of thing. Like, I had been a good player my first few years. 2009, I had made the All-Star team in Aberdeen, but I had like sort of trailed off at the end of the year, and it's just a 70-game season. 2010, I'd had a pretty good year. I had like 40 extra base hits, hit like 260. 2011, made the All-Star team again in low A. 2012, I started in high A, and I was doing pretty well. I was hitting like 280 through the first like month and a half. I had like a few home runs, I think. And then I got called up to Triple A because I was filling in. So I was not a prospect at this point. And so I get called up to Triple A because a guy got DFA'd, another guy got hurt, another guy smashed his helmet into the cubby holder and broke his thumb. And so they had like no infielders. The guys in Double A couldn't get flights out of wherever they were. So they called me and my friend up from high A. And I end up, we go straight to Indianapolis, which like was the coolest thing ever. Like, we're in Triple A, we're facing guys that have like been in the big leagues. And it's like amazing. And so I'm starting at third. I was an awful fielder at this point. But so my first game, I'm playing against a lefty, and I was almost as bad hitting right-handed as I was at fielding at this point in my career. My one redeeming quality was that I absolutely raked left-handed, and I could hit anybody. And this call-up sort of proved that, you know, to myself as much as anything, that you know. So I end up getting like a chopper single in my first game to go like 1 for 3, and then the next game in Indianapolis, I start again because, you know, everyone's still hurt. And I go, what did I do? I went like 1 for 3 again. And the next day start again. And I hit like an oppo double off the wall, cause I'm hitting left-handed now. And another hit, and like, you know, like I'm doing really well. And they end up keeping me and bringing me back to Norfolk, in the AAA affiliate for the Orioles. And so I got to stay there for like 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, like Miguel Tejada came to our team, Bill Hall, like these super old veterans. And this was like the thing the Orioles do is they load up their AAA team with very veteran guys. So they know if they need someone in a pinch, they've got someone who's not going to freak out that they're getting called up to the big leagues, or at least that's what they were doing at the time. And so I got to play there, and I ended up hitting second for like 2 weeks in the order. And like, I'm raking, like facing Chris Archer, who was still in AAA at the time, like a bunch of other guys, and like very much holding my own. I hit a home run in Norfolk, which is like the most ridiculous place to hit. They actually just brought the fences in recently because it was so stupid. But like, I'm basically like raking there. And but I end up getting sent back down to high A because I was a replacement, and they sort of were like, okay, like, we know he can play now, he's a prospect. So when I went back to high A, this is kind of I mean, it's kind of stupid now, but I think it was a thing. Like, I kept the Norfolk Tide sticker on my helmet to just have that like kind of reminder that I was there and I was raking there, and everyone knew that. Everyone on our team knew that. And I was wearing cleats that Miguel Tejada had given me, even though they were like a size and a half too small. And yeah, and that confidence like propelled me to go from hitting 280 when I got back to getting called up mid-July. So from mid-May to mid-July, my average went from like 280 to I ended up hitting 350 something, I think. And I was like leading the league in hitting by the time I got called up to Double A, like a real call up this time. And just like that confidence, obviously my swing was really good, but like, yeah, that confidence of like, there's no way that these guys in high A can get me out. I just went up to AAA and competed, like, and felt sort of close to being a big leaguer and getting called up. Like, that was huge for me to be able to have that kind of confidence.
What's and I appreciate your time. Like, we'll finish up in a minute. I have a question that I've always wanted to know. What is the difference between the levels? You've been in every level, and is there a way? Is it AA guys have the skill and aren't there mentally? Is it AAA guys are good enough to be in the big leagues and don't have an opportunity? You know, how much better are big leaguers than the rest of professional baseball?
It's always been consistency for me, I think, is the thing that separates people. That it's always like, oh, if you go up to the big leagues, you can't miss down the middle because those guys don't miss it. And like, obviously that's it's an overgeneralization, but it's, the sentiment is there that like, those guys are just way more consistent. They've done it way more times. They figured out something that works for them. A lot of the guys, like, I mean, how many hitters hit the exact same way? How many pitchers throw the exact same way? Like, everyone's different, but they figured out the thing that works for them, and whatever thing like makes them tick or makes, makes them able to compete at that level. They've gotten really good at just figuring out how to do it over and over again. And that's always been what I thought was the biggest difference, because you can go to an A-ball game and see a dude throwing 100. You can go to a AAA game and see like Gerson Bautista, like with the Mets, and I'm not sure where he is now, but like he's sitting like 102 in AAA and getting rocked. And like, it's like, what's the difference? It's not that like, that he's not throwing hard enough, that people in AAA don't throw hard. Like, it's that there's something that he's missing over the middle constantly. You know what I mean? So like, whatever it is, you can pick a bunch of examples, like, not to pick on him because he's a cool guy, but like, it's just that consistency of the guys that throw 100 in the big leagues. They know that if they miss down the middle, guys can hit that now. Like, that's not as unique anymore. So the consistency of being able to spot in the corner or spot like just above the belt or whatever it is, I think is the thing that changes at every level.
Is there a big league moment or a baseball moment you'll take with you? One moment in your career, a favorite one, or something where you're like, fuck, like that was awesome. That's my favorite one.
Yeah, and like, I'm fortunate to have a few of those. I think the thing that I go back and watch the most is my hit in the wild card game. Probably one, because it's the last postseason hit for the Mets, which will obviously only stand for so long. But so it's very cool right now. And the fact that I was even afforded that opportunity at all, I think is pretty crazy after not really having played in September that much. And, I wouldn't have been on other playoff rosters if we had won the game, because it was an expanded roster for the wild card game, because you don't need any of your spots for your starting rotation. So it's only one game roster. So yeah, the fact that I was afforded that opportunity before the game, the hitting coach, or the assistant hitting coach, had said I was only going to pinch hit against either George Contos, who I had had success against and had faced a billion times in the minors and in the big leagues, and or Will Smith, the lefty. So either left-handed against Contos or right-handed against Will Smith, who I had hit a triple off of in San Francisco earlier in the season. And I thought he was terrible, even though he's like an all-star all the time. But so yeah, they told me I was only supposed to play against them, and then having, it's the playoffs and it's in New York, and the fans are not really sure how to feel about me, or they were sure how to feel about me, and it was not great.
Change that.
And I hadn't really started like tweeting the way I do now, because I was still on the team. So they didn't know who I was yet. And then I basically closed my eyes and reach out and get a single, and like it's against San Francisco too. And I sort of forgot that until after the game that every one of my friends that I went to college with lives in San Francisco and is a gigantic, unfortunately I said gigantic already, but Giants fan, and just a Giants fan, and like and they tell me like they're going crazy at the bar that they're at, like watching the game, and then everyone's looking at him like what are you guys doing? You're at the Giants bar right now, and in San Francisco, and cheering for the Mets. Just I don't know. Anything against San Francisco in my career was really special.
Well, I appreciate your time doing this. What are you up to now? And explain your work with MILB Advocates.
Yeah, with advocates for minor leaguers, MILB Advocates on Twitter and Instagram. And we're advocating similarly to what you guys are doing, More Than Baseball, where our approach is the long-term systemic change and trying to put ourselves out of business, basically. As soon as the minor leaguers start getting paid decent wages and have decent living conditions and are able to provide for themselves and for their families without being on poverty level wages, the sooner I will stop having to yell at people about it.
And Sweet Potato Ties is coming eventually.
I sure hope so. Yeah, there's some. I mean, I think that like this time more than anything, is a cool chance for players to be able to show who they are as people to fans. And I think through all of the everyone playing video games against each other, or having Instagram lives with other players, I think that that's one of the coolest things about sports is being able to humanize them. And I think that Sweet Potato Ties as a brand is, and hopefully will be all about bringing fans closer to their favorite players and allowing everyone to share in the, the human experience of just everyone being basically the same, except they got really good at a sport and the fans really enjoy watching that sport. So yeah, that's kind of my mission with Sweet Potato Ties. And we'll see what form that takes in the future.
No, I want to thank you. Yeah, you're so much fun to play with, and I appreciate you taking the time. What's your walk-up song?
Sacrifice by the Expendables, and it starts at 9 seconds in.
Okay.
And they're a band from Santa Cruz. They're in the like reggae rock, the sort of California reggae rock scene. They're very popular. And we had some like Twitter stuff, like a lot of people would always ask me what my walk-up song was, and I would always tag them in it. And so, yeah, it was cool to have sort of like exchanges with them on Twitter, and kind of like, the same way that when people tweet at me and I tweet something sarcastic back to them, they can have that kind of experience with a former athlete at this point.
Current Olympian.
Yeah, we'll see.
The Grind is a 940 Media production. For more information on More Than Baseball, you can follow us at MTB_ORG on Instagram and Twitter, or visit our website, morethanbaseball.org.
Well, it would have been with a different plan, but it's tied upon the sand.